Oh my god, I'm so hyped. This is going to be fucking Wait a second. Wait, an important thing about any form of entertainment is the element of surprise, and given that I'm expecting a season of Bojack to offer A, some of the sharpest meta-comedy that's ever been put in a TV show, and B, insightful character drama, if I'm expecting that, will it be as good? That and clear patterns have emerged by now. There'll probably be a flashback episode or two, a few experimental conceits, one of Bojack's inter-character relationships will irrevocably fracture, episode 11 will be the Wham episode, there'll be parental relationship stuff in there. Can it be as emotionally affecting now that I'm familiar with how the show works and what it does? Am I setting myself up for disappointment here? So cold. So very, very cold. So, I had a feeling that the whole unmasking of Hollywood sexual predators that's been happening in recent years would end up being a theme that Bojack Horseman would explore eventually. It's really not an easy topic to approach, especially in an animated comedy show, but Bojack Horseman's different. It's never been an easy show to just watch, let alone talk about. It can set you into bleak and depressing mood spirals for days on end. Harrowing is never usually a word that you use to describe an animated sitcom, but yes, Bojack Horseman is fucking harrowing. Season 5 is one of the most openly confrontational runs so far. It goes deep into examining the ideals of its characters and the moral grey areas that come with the territory of working with flawed people in Hollywood who've done completely unjustifiable things. The show's very open about the dialogue it's having regarding established figures in the entertainment industry, and the way in which the audience absorbs what they put out and reacts to news of them doing terrible things. But importantly here, the show accepts that there's no easy answer to any of it, as much as it might seem like it, and as much as its characters might think that there are. The first episode sets these dilemmas out beautifully, wherein Bojack barges into an audition for a stripper character with the input for Flip that the nudity in the show may be gratuitous. But if the scene gets dropped, these ladies are out of a job, and alternative suggestions can be just as problematic. Similarly, the sex scandal that engulfs whattimesitnow.com at the end of the series, where the entire company gets shut down as a result, and many people lose their jobs along with it. Yes, corporate irresponsibility for putting a dumb sex robot in charge and people being allowed to get away with doing shitty things is the issue here, but the results of a scandal are genuinely something to consider in the wake of any type of PR nightmare. Collectively, a lot of us appear to have grasped assigning blame for shitty actions, the individual of course, but also the environment that allowed their terrible behaviour to go unchecked. But finding the blame is only part of the process in fixing things, and other solutions typically offered up or that arise of their own accord invite their own problems. There were loads of innocent people who worked at whattimesitnow.com, and they essentially become collateral damage. The reason why people like Vance and Bojack have been allowed to do shitty things and get away with it and everything's back to normal at the start of the next season, just like in a sitcom, and no one ever learns a fucking thing and it happens over and over again, is that the entire Hollywood system has arisen and is constructed in such a way that's already normalised their behaviour. And there isn't an easy way to fix that without ruining more things, because everything's already woven together. That's how you can just sort of continue on laughing at Bojack's jokes about Melon until you remember, oh yeah, the thing with Charlotte's daughter. He's essentially responsible for Sarah Lynn's death. And he's got away with it, and the status quo gets reset at the end of the season. But what Season 5 does is it goes into why it gets reset. It uses the structure, or lack thereof, of a typical sitcom to offer a structured commentary on the Hollywood cycle of horrible shit happens and no one learns a damn thing. It is totally fucked up that Bojack can go off his head and assault his co-star, and for his co-star to arrive at the conclusion that they have to outwardly smile and act like nothing's wrong because otherwise this one incident devours public perception of her forever, and she doesn't want that. This scene in itself is a perfect metaphor for depression and how the fragile construction of society, particularly in the entertainment industry, leads to people rationalising the idea of keeping up an unhealthy facade to hide what's really killing them inside. Because her choice seems logical when she explains it. But it's so fucked up that she was led to a position where she feels like she has to take it. This is why people don't say anything. It may seem like it's easy to fix these issues, but it's really not. It may seem simple for moral grandstanders like Diane to say that if someone fucked up, someone keeps fucking up, it's obvious that they fucked up, then the answer is that we pull the plug, but there are so many other factors to consider. Diane's ideas may seem simple and obvious to her, but when explaining them to Bojack, all he can really take away from it is bits and pieces. And while her ideals are sound, do those ideals actually line up with how she's built her life so far? Confronting Diane with Bojack's past and her having to square the idea that someone whose show was a huge part of her childhood, someone she's really gotten close to in recent years, who's almost seemed like a reflection of her in some ways. How does she rationalise that? Does that say something bad about her because she and Bojack have seemed so in sync if he's capable of something monstrous? Is practicing what you preach even possible in Hollywood? Because Diane's not above any of this, she's already so tied up in this complicated mess. A journey to find herself in Vietnam finds her on a film set and writing clickbait for her website. She's still around her ex-husband all the time because of work and has no chance to really move on. Last season she started losing herself in the Hollywood system. Now she finds out that a close friend and professional associate may have done something fucked up, and what she immediately does is use that as a means of adding depth to a TV show she's working on. How does she internally justify where she is in her life right now? There is no right answer. The solid principles that Diane holds dear will only ever get her so far, and her journey towards realising that and dropping the pretense that these issues are simple and easy to fix, which she underlines beautifully in this speech at the end of the season, is why Bojack Horseman is one of the most mature bits of media out there. When you look at hyperbolic social media and news coverage, we need a show like Bojack to take a level-headed look at the landscape of Hollywood and the media, and recognise that the misguided solution that Bojack presents Diane with, a coordinated takedown, isn't the solution either, and it doesn't come without consequence. The TV show literally called Gotcha that Bojack appears on isn't helping. Bojack and Vance using feminist talking points to take public swings at each other isn't helping. The truth is that the solutions that these issues desperately need don't really exist yet, and the solutions we've been trying have their own issues. It's such a minefield that we've been conditioned into this position where while we're having a blazing row over something that one of us did that's fucked up, we have to stop and make straight faces for publicity's sake because there's too much at stake here to put ourselves and our humanity first. Maybe we aren't just normalising shitty behaviour. Maybe the problem is that it's already been normalised, and society and the media are just constructed in such a way that makes effective solutions too complicated for most people to deal with. Taking chunks out of each other and blaming ourselves for our part in the terrible actions of others or ourselves like Bojack and Diane both do, that isn't helping. Letting things carry on as normal and hoping the problems fix themselves like Bojack does with his attempt at self-medication, that doesn't work either. All we can really do is just prod each other in the right direction and hope for the best. Seek help, make an effort to get better, because assigning the blame only does one thing, assigns the blame. It's only part of the process in improving things. It doesn't help anyone or anything get better. Okay, there, I did the difficult bit. Can I do some fun stuff now? I do really love how this season has so many callback jokes and references, as you'd expect of a show in its 5th season, but it'll have a callback joke or a visual reference, e.g. Mr. Peanut Butter will allude to something that happened a few seasons ago, but then Bojack's former publicist will show up with a callback to a harsh moment from season 2 that ends up being key to the social commentary of the season. As a fan on season 5, you're thrown off by a callback, something meant to be fuzzy and nostalgic by design, but then a further callback to an entirely serious and devastating moment that feels just as devastating as when it first happened, and that has major implications going forward. I was genuinely expecting Bojack and Diane's bridges to be burnt by the end of the season, and when it wasn't and Diane offers some genuine heartfelt insight, it was a gorgeous moment of television. The episode that contains my favourite joke in the season is Mr. Peanut Butter's booze, which is a genius concept in itself of Mr. Peanut Butter forcing Bojack to host a Halloween party every year, which he puts off stopping him from doing year after year for 2.5 decades. We get this unique and seamless structure where you watch similar scenarios play out every time where Mr. Peanut Butter's actions at the party ruin his relationships.
Oh my god, what a weird coincidence. Why do all these idealistic, vivacious women eventually turn bitter and cruel after being with me? What's the common denominator?
I love this joke so much because it highlights just how difficult people find it to recognise an obvious pattern and change their behaviour. Because you look at typical relationship issues and people do make the same mistakes over and over again and never seem to figure out that they need to change something themselves to get better. Which in itself is also Bojack's problem, as he's been involuntarily hosting an annual party for 2.5 decades. There are ways of stopping these repeating patterns, but Mr. Peanut Butter and Bojack are just so wrapped up in themselves to be able to see it, and okay, I'm going bleak and introspective again, aren't I? Okay, fun stuff. So, how's about that funeral episode? And, wait. Drug addiction, divorce, blackmail, teenage pregnancy, miscarriage, Fucking Christ, this is a difficult season. Free Churro was an interesting one and was bound to happen eventually, and the only real thing I can criticise it for is that I expected them to handle the inevitable death of Bojack's mother this way. Almost an entire episode spent as Bojack's eulogy. The show's always been very big on exploring nuances and grey areas, and while the perspective that Bojack's painted of his parents has been entirely negative so far, it's interesting seeing this reaction to his mother's death. Seeing that there's always been this hope that there is some kind of love there behind the bitterness and vitriol. But he might just be looking for something deeper that isn't there to avoid the unending bleakness of the prospect that maybe there isn't. You can interpret I see you in all manner of ways. My husband is dead, and everything is worse now. But why is it worse now? What does that mean? Hell, maybe that's what idiots on the internet like me are doing, looking for something deeper in the chronicles of a talking horse battling with depression, when it is all essentially in the name of entertainment. It's just a eulogy told like a comedy routine, complete with knock-knock jokes, where the knock is absent and that's the point. His mother is dead and there's no way through the setup to get to the punchline anymore. Now he doesn't have the cold-hearted old lady that he blames for all his problems. He's just left alone with his memories and his bitterness. Oh look, here's a bunch of characters slipping over a leaking barrel of lubricant. Haha, oh isn't that funny? Yes, funny everybody, yes, it's a fun video. Bojack Horseman's essentially an incredibly dark farce. The idea that the set for Bojack's fake cop show Filbert just so happens to look exactly like his own apartment is totally ludicrous and farcical, but it's also integral to Bojack trying to justify his past actions and live with himself through a fictional character. The moment near the end of the first episode where Bojack talks about how much he hates the character is interesting because it's not the character that Bojack hates. He hated Filbert because he saw himself reflected in that script. The veil of fiction allows him to kid himself that it's just a character he plays when it's fucking staring him in the face this whole time. He's turned into someone that he hates.
I tell you, buddy, this is going to be a sensational season of television.
By the way, I love this choice of music. Los Angeles is one of my favourite songs of the decade, and the perfect choice of music for this show. Episode 11, The Showstopper, is probably my favourite of the season. I know most people seems to be Free Churro, but I just love the structure of The Showstopper, the blurring of the lines between Bojack and Filbert to the point where they become one and the same. Filbert itself is such a good storytelling device as well. The clips we see of it are a fucking hilarious send-up of the type of boring, cliched, dark and gritty crime dramas, the type of which I got bored of when I was a teenager, and also serve to show just how emotionally stunted Bojack is because it's so damn childish.
Kiss me, you smart, handsome renegade.
There's no time for that now. The nuclear missiles are coming.
Cut!
I do love how later on in the season, Bojack starts wearing his Filbert costume even when he doesn't need to. He personally doesn't do nearly as much introspection throughout the season as he usually does, because he's managing to convince himself that it's all an act, when it so blatantly isn't. It's like the show's given him a way of shielding himself from his own self-loathing and depression. And he's got back pain, that's why he needs those drugs. There's always something that lets him delude himself into thinking that he doesn't have a problem and that he doesn't need help and allows him to sleep at night. I'm sure there was some light-hearted stuff in here. Todd's still doing his dumb, wacky, farcical, cartoonish shit that you'd expect of an adult animated sitcom, pretending him and his asexual girlfriend are sexually active because her family are a bunch of sex obsessives, making a sex robot for his high school girlfriend, goes for a job at whattimeisitnow.com off the back of one of Bojack's stupid self-serving schemes, and ends up getting made an executive. It's all totally stupid, funny stuff that has to be in there, otherwise the show would barely be able to call itself a comedy. But it also mechanically functions as a springboard for the season's conversation about the environment of corporate irresponsibility that cultivates terrible behaviour and boxes people into a position where they feel they can't speak out against it. I just find it so unendingly fascinating that purposefully dumb stoner comedy is utilised so efficiently in this show to help structure the emotional arcs and social commentary that the show's going for. Getting on to Princess Carolyn's arc this season, in many ways it's similar to Mr. Peanut Butter stumbling through repeating scenarios blind to the issues with what he's doing. It's a dark dramatic farce again, because Princess Carolyn essentially acts as a motherly figure towards Bojack. She's on call dealing with his stupid problems 24 hours a day and is so stressed and frantic that she essentially already is a mother and she doesn't realise it. Showing up to the hospital where her maybe baby's about to be born a wreck and covered in food, she is what she wants to be and she doesn't appreciate it. She's got that goal of adoption, something that she thinks will make everything okay, but it won't. Her mother died and everything was worse, but maybe having a baby, like the one she lost when she was a teenager, the baby back then offered her an easy life, maybe it will again. No, it won't. So Mr. Peanut Butter proposes to Pickles because he can't face up to breaking the cycle that he's realised he's in by now, but admitting that to himself and others would destroy his sense of self. Princess Carolyn adopts that baby for the wrong reasons. Todd kills his dumb sex robot and leaves the cushy job and goes back to his normal life and everything's going to start again. Diane's story is different in that she's had her views confronted and come out a better person for it. Will rehab do anything for Bojack? Is there any kind of redemption for him? Fuck knows, but this was a dark and difficult and brutal season, and given the way it ends, Season 6 is probably about to get even darker. And I'd wager it'll have more of an emphasis on Mr. Peanut Butter and Princess Carolyn next time round. All in all, I have no idea whether I'd say 5 is a better or worse run of shows than the previous 4. I don't even know how Bojack Horseman could possibly get any worse or better. It just always is what it is. It's one of those truly unique and barely classifiable experiences that's always familiar and yet finds new ways to surprise me whenever I think I know what's coming.